Hello. Is my mic on? Is that all working okay? Can anyone tell me if things are all working fine? Audio is all fine? Stream showing? Okay, cool. So I don't expect a whole lot of viewers. If you want to tune out at any time, that's fine. So just as a, I guess, forewarning, I'm gonna start by just sort of explain the entire process, like the process of how the strat sort of came to be. So before the final thing, how, like, what was the development of it, what were some of the initial thoughts, all of that kind of stuff. Because I think that when it comes to these sorts of things, you see the final product, and maybe you can notice some things in the final product, some crucial details, but I think you kind of can't see what really went on behind the scenes. So I'm gonna start with that, and then after that, depending on what you guys want, I can either do a live play or I can do a review of the footage, up to you guys. Anyway, so I'm gonna start with my rationale behind the comp. And my thought with this was essentially, how do I deal with the grudge bearers? Because the idea in my head was, like, I could have the smoothest, cleanest play up until the grudge bearers, but if I don't have a way to kill the grudge bearers without Surtrless, then everything's just gonna fall the hell apart. And so when it came down to that, there were sort of two things to consider. First is, how do I kill them? And secondly, how do I actually survive long enough to kill them? Obviously, without you can't really survive grudge bearers with too long, so you have to have quite a lot of damage. And without Surtrless, you have, that's one less. You know, you could normally have like Spectre or Surtrless or something like that, and, you know, immortal your way through. But even though we can have Spectre immortality, there's still one. They attack two targets, so that's still one more sort of target that you'll either have to cycle through or tank. And so that's why I went with Mudrock. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but this was the sort of thought process that was going into the whole thing, is just, how do I firstly tank them? So hence Spectre and Mudrock. And the other thing was, when it came to Mudrock, is the choice between S2 and S3. There are clears that use both. I'm aware that you can use Mudrock S2 and be fine, but my thought was that we kind of want as much, I guess, leeway as we can when it comes to dealing with the grudge bearers. And so Mudrock's S3 gives us 5 seconds of stun, that whilst Mudrock's S2 is, whilst it does stun, it's a lot less consistent. You know, it's literally RNG as to whether it procs or not, whereas S3 is completely consistent and will last for longer. And, you know, I don't have to pray for some, like, big brain stun in the middle of a grudge bearer attack or anything like that. The other thing is that S3 is higher burst DPS, and we're really worried about whether or not we can burst those grudge bearers down. So that was another thing that went into it. And of course, the bonus with Spectre and Mud is that they're also both quite good at burst damage as well. So that's one additional sort of contributing factor to their picks. Again, sounds pretty obvious, but you know, you gotta reason your way through this whole thing. And so the next thought is, how do we kill 3/4 grudge bearers at once? Because, you know, that triple grudge bearer wave is probably the bigger problem. If we can deal with that, then dealing with a single grudge bearer shouldn't be as bad, especially given that, you know, Mudrock's only gonna have one shield being eaten through at a time, as opposed to getting 3 or 4 shields eaten through. And so the Aya, Saria, Suzu combo should be pretty obvious. It's the one that I think every Surtrless combo, every Surtrless clear to date has used, just because of how much damage Aya can do within that short burst window. And I know that other clears were using Ifrit. That actually wasn't my first thought. My first thought was actually Silver Ash, because when I mathed it out, if I can actually get the math up, so we put up Aya's S3, take out the res shred, factor in Suzu, Saria, Amp, the CC debuffs, the 30% from the vent, 15-second uptime, we get about, okay, so 35k DPS, 35k total damage. Not entirely accurate because of frames and all of that, but close enough. And so if we then chuck in Silver Ash, Grudge Bearers I believe have 350 defense. He's also getting the vent buff, and our damage amp this time is 46% with an uptime of let's say about 25 seconds or something like that. Yeah, about 30k. And Grudge Bearers have 66k. So those two alone, from the math, can do most of the killing. And that's why I wasn't really considering Ifrit, because my thought was that Silver Ash and Aya would be able to do most of it, and Ifrit was going to be a actually going to be a flex pick if I didn't have enough damage, just so that her red shred can put things over the line. And the other thing with Silver Ash that I later found out was extremely useful and actually core to the strat was his redeploy talent. Because what is it, like minus 7-8 seconds off of each redeploy timer is actually huge given the way that I played. And so we have 6 slots filled up, and without Surtur, and considering that we have like flag buffs if we were to go with that strat to consider, again, I didn't think DPS was really going to be that feasible, so I wanted to go with a stall strat. And so my first thought was just kind of the classic sort of no Quora stall that you've, or you know, those variants that you've probably seen on Billy. And so that left 2 flex slots. Those were later filled by Eli and Maggie, but at the time I didn't actually know who to fill those slots with. So before Cinder started, it was an 8-man core: Saria, Silver Ash, Aya, Mudrock, Spectre, Suzu, Nil, and Quora. 8 people with 2 flex slots to consider. And so this is going to look different to the actual clear, but the sort of theory behind the sort of theorized setup for the left side kind of looked like this. And you'll notice that Spectre like in this setup isn't actually facing isn't actually going to be facing towards the enemies, and that's because at the time I didn't actually realize that there was a neat sort of synergy between Spectre's S2 and Mudrock's S3. I did, of course, realize it later, which is why it's in the clear, but just at the time I wasn't aware, so the setup sort of went like this. And the and as well as that, so yeah, I'm obviously lacking quite a bit of DPS. I didn't have Maggie there either, and so my thought was like Mudrock would stun, I'd pop Spectre, Spectre and Mudrock would tank one clap, they'd be fine. After like 5 more seconds, they'd tank another clap, we'd be like 11 seconds. Sorry, yeah, Spectre would tank another clap, Mudrock would die, Aya would, and then the next clap, if we deployed Silrash before Aya, would then target Spectre and Aya would die, and then at like, and that would be at about the 16-second mark post stun going off, and then like 5 seconds later Silrash would get clapped. Fortunately I didn't go with this because I'm pretty sure the damage actually wouldn't have been enough, and so later on was when I sort of realized like, oh hey, Mudrock's stun is 5 seconds, Spectre's stun is 5 seconds, so when the stun goes off I can actually deploy Spectre's S2, deploy Spectre, and then once those 5 seconds elapse, even though the Grudge Bearers will no longer be stunned, Spectre's skill will be completely charged, so she'll be fine, and then that's a bit more damage going towards the Grudge Bearers. This setup alone, without the Maggie drone bait, is actually enough to kill the Grudge Bearers, and I discovered that from my own testing in week 1. Maggie's drone was later added just for that extra bit of safety, basically. And when it came down, and if we plod the left side kill, then we also had to think about the right side kill, and that setup also looked different back when I wasn't aware of the little Spectre trick. That looked something like this, because my fear was that for some reason I was seriously fearing that, like, I know Mudrock, I guess it probably looked more like this, but yeah, again, I didn't know about the Spectre trick at the time. Now I do, which is why she gets deployed like that. And that theory was basically what the entire comp was built around, was that one clapper theory. And so the next considerations to come after that were, how do I kill the Blade Weavers? And how do I kill the Lancers? And so Blade Weavers, with regards to the Blade Weavers, so the thought for the first wave looked pretty similar to what you saw in the clear, which is, oh, wrong spot, something like this. Just whacking with Suzanne and Saria amp, and that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, just about enough to kill a Blade Weaver. So I was pretty comfortable there. And the other kill that I thought of, so I knew that I wanted Saria down here to help stall the for the stall. And so the thought was if I could have Aya and Spectre actually work together to burst down the Blade Weavers. You see in the actual clear that this is not what happens because I used Silver Ash instead. But at the time, before Cinder had come out, this was essentially the thought that was going through my head. And both Blade Weaver setups mathematically work out to be enough damage to kill a Blade Weaver. Just while we're at it, one other thing is that I was actually debating with regards to the left side about whether I was gonna kill the demo and the first clapper together and then kill triple clappers, or whether I was going to kill triple clappers, or whether I was just gonna kill demo first and then kill quad clappers. Some testing pretty quickly figured out that the redeploy timing and the DP amounts are just incredibly cursed. If I have to do that, if I have to like redeploy stuff to set up for a clapper kill, like retreat and then redeploy again. So that's why there's it's a quadruple clapper kill. The reason why I was debating between the two is just because Spectre and Mudrock, well, not Spectre at the time, but Mudrock attacks 3 enemies at once. So I was just concerned whether that last clapper was, like, whether if I was to let 4 clappers through, that one of them would live and wreck me. Of course, now we know that 4 clapper is better, but I didn't know that at the time without testing. And the last threat, the Lancer. So this was sort of theory crafter later. So my initial theory crafting probably started around mid-April, just because I want to like sort of get some time to think through all that sort of stuff. Lancers came like about late May. And so the thought with the first and second Lancers is actually pretty similar to what was the thought, pretty similar to what you see in the actual clear, which is that we use a stall defender, so in this case Nerl, to hold 2 Lancers whilst Aya and Suzu and a bit of Zarya, because the 2 Lancers arrive at around the same sort of point as the Blade Weavers. But the thought was just to use that combo to essentially kill them. A full Aya S3 and plus a pot 5 Suzu, emphasis on pot 5, is just about enough to either kill or like have the Lancers on the verge of death by the time Aya's 15 seconds are up. So that was a thought there. The little Magellan drone trick wasn't added until later on, because if you look at when the 2 Lancers spawn, let me scroll down. They spawn within 15-20 seconds of each other. Suzu's S3 is 35 seconds, Aya's S3 is 15 seconds. So the thought was like, oh, if we stall that Lancer like just before he touches Nerl, we have like a 20-second window and then Aya can do her thing. And then I later figured out that, and then, you know, once Mag was added into the mix, that all changed. But again, initial thoughts. Third Lancer was actually very, very different to what ended up happening in the actual clear. So I knew that I was going to have Mudrock hold this side. And so my actual thought was to have like Silver Ash here or something. And so the idea would be like, basically have Silver Ash in a safe spot. And then have him kind of clear out the waves preceding Mudrock, and then have that, as that Lancer sort of charges in, he just dies to some combo of Mudrock S3 and Silver Ash S3. Clearly not what happened in the actual clear at all, but at the time I hadn't actually thought about the fact that that Lancer could just kind of run in and then like kind of cop a bunch of damage from Mudrock anyway. So that was actually the thought for that. So yeah, that changed a lot. That, and even before then, there was another thought, which was once I added Magellan into the mix, because I hadn't fully settled on the final strat for the third Lancer that you see in the video. My thought was if we could have some like really good Magellan timing and like store the Lancer like just before he's like sort of just as he enters this B4 tile, and then drop Saria on his head so he gets split boxed back into split boxed into B5, and then have Aya go down and like wipe out 3 Lancers with 1 Volcano. Again, it's not what happened in the actual clear, because eventually I realized that, oh right, we can use Mudrock to just tank it, and her S3 is gonna be up and she's gonna fucking whack him for a good bit of damage. But again, things change. And so that was sort of the prevailing theory going into the whole thing. And there was also some like sort of side thoughts of like I could probably use like Silver Ash and like the Aya waves and stuff to like help kill the Mooks, plus like Mudrock S3. I didn't really think too much about the Mooks because I considered them pretty low threat. I didn't think too much about the opener, although I probably should have. Most of my efforts were essentially focused on Grudge Bearers, Blade Weavers, and Lancers. Once Cinder opened and I got the opportunity to do some actual testing, I realized pretty quickly that my opener was extremely DP hungry. So that's why Elysium was added, even though now it seems pretty obvious in retrospect. And the other thing was that I realized quite quickly, because my initial plans for the opener was something like, I don't know, like Silver Ash or like Spectre or something. I didn't think too much of think about Mudrock S3 at the time, because I thought, oh, she's gonna leak and it's not gonna be viable at all. But yeah, so yeah, Silver Ash or Spectre, and I realized quite quickly that that opener was absolutely not going to do it. And so my next thought was actually not Magellan, it was actually Hoshiguma. And the rationale behind that was from the Project Arc 7 op clear, where Hoshi essentially cleared the opening wave on her own. And my thought was, oh, okay, I could bring like Hoshi or something. And after some testing, I mean, that worked for the opener, and then after some testing, it turned out that she was, like, the flags were extremely cursed, and I needed to store them, otherwise everything was going to fall apart. And so the thought after that was essentially, well, shit, time to use mags, and shit, we have no hope, we can't do any of the standard openers, so now we have to mold we have to just kind of essentially pull a Magellan Mudrock opener out of nowhere. And that's how the Magellan Mudrock opener in the video essentially came to be. It was just from me realizing that all my other thoughts of an opener had essentially just been dashed against a fucking wall. So that's kind of the theory going that was sort of happening before the actual clear. And so moving on to the actual clear itself, I guess the question is, would you guys rather have me actually play through the clear, albeit probably very slowly and probably scuffing a few things and having to reset a few times? Or would you rather I go over the video? Up to you. Again, I don't mind, like, either way. Just say whatever and we can do it. You want the vid review? Okay. So, if I can get that up. Whoa, magic. Live play. I mean, okay, next comment decides it then. Whether you want a vid or you want the live play. Again, the live play is, I guess, more interactive, but just, again, I could just friggin' scuff it and have to retry like 5 different times because of the execution required. Okay, live play it is. Let me actually switch to some more appropriate music. Do I need refresh support? No, I absolutely don't. Alright. Again, I could scuff things, and I'll probably play extremely slowly. So Eli dropped as soon as possible because the timing for the Sara deployment later is quite tight, so we want his skill up as fast as possible, essentially, so that we don't miss those that valuable DP tick. Spam click. And drop Mudrock. The timing on this is pretty lenient, just drop her before this guy reaches, but you know, dropping her as soon as possible is good practice. We drop mags as soon as we can, and we wait a bit, and we pay attention to the DP bar here for Mudrock's timing. And so the idea is, because we're going with a -1 DP mags and a -1 DP Mudrock, we want to press Mudrock's skill when the cost bar is almost full at 8. If it was pot 6 both, we'd be waiting for when the cost bar is almost full at 10. So we press that, and we wait a bit, and when the white bar's just about aligned with the tip of the cost icon is when we press Magellan's S1. There's a really important balance to be struck here, and the reason for that is if I stall too much, then Mudrock's going to be rushed, overwhelmed, and it's going to be extremely cursed. On the other hand, if I stall too little, then Mudrock's going to be overwhelmed at the beginning. So I have to strike that balance between letting enough enemies through to Mudrock such that she can damage them, at the same time holding enough back such that she won't get overwhelmed. And we spam click Elysium's skill so that we don't miss the Saria deployment, and drop her as soon as we can. Next thing to pay attention to is the drone timing. So this is actually pretty generous, but just because it works and because I built the habit of it, we drop the drone when we can see this guy essentially come out of the tunnel. So as he's materializing out of the tunnel, we drop the drone and we know that with that timing he's going to be stalled in time. We drop Suzu as soon as we can because we want her. There's a bit of a window, but essentially we want her talent working on Magellan because we want Magellan's S1 to be up as soon as we can. And we'll just drop the drone here to help stall the Blade Weavers a little bit. And this is the state that we want our left lane to be in. Is we want these two guys to be on roughly this amount of health, and if this guy's untouched, it's fine. If we miss time, then what can happen is that one of these guys might have a slight bit more health, and that can actually present an issue because it means Mudrock needs like 1 or 2 more hits, which like messes with the timing of her S3. So basically, this state is the good state. This is what we want it to be. And then Aya facing down just so that she can do a tiny bit more damage to the lances. It's not a big deal, but you can think of it as like every little bit helps. And we just dropped her drone. And as soon as Magellan's skill comes up, we press it, and we do the same for Elysium's skill. We drop Spectre, and we pay attention to this left side, and what we essentially do is, so once these red lines come out indicating the Lancer path, we wait for the next freeze and then undeploy both of these drones. Like this. And then we drop the drone on this guy. This guy raises his sword for the second time, we pop Spectre skill, we also pop Suzerain skill, and now that Mudrock hits this guy, we press her S3. I think there might be some slight lenience here with the Mudrock timing, but it should be something like this. I think if we do it like 1 hit earlier, it might still be fine, but anyway, we'll have to see. We drop Nerl, just to prepare for these guys just to help prepare stall this guy. And once this drone comes up, we stall this flag bearer. I've had numerous issues with flag bearers and getting accidentally hit and not being blocked at the right time. So it's really important that they get stalled. That's why that guy also got mag drone at the start, just to make sure that this guy that's currently walking down doesn't mess with any of my timings. Now, as this guy comes barreling down, we wait for him to enter this specific tile. We retreat, we pop Aya, we retreat Spectre, and we're pretty confident that these Blade Weavers will just die before they can really reach Saria. We just pop no skill in advance before we forget. And also before we forget, we'll drop a drone here. And that's how you know that you've executed all of your Mudrock Magellan timings correctly, is that Mudrock will now be pretty safe from leaking anything, and these guys are just gonna die. And yeah, the reason why Saria is deployed here and not in her usual spot is essentially because it means that these two Lancers are going to be taking slightly more damage than they usually would, because they'll be in 2 tiles of calcification instead of 1 tile. And Spectre facing left, because if she was facing down, then those Blade Weavers would trigger earlier, which might potentially mess with some timings. And a spec with Saria and Suzu Amp will should pretty comfortably kill those Blade Weavers. Yup, as seen. I don't have any more need for Saria, so I can undeploy her. And now that this last wave comes out, yeah, we can undeploy her. Does Aya targeting RNG ever matter? So for this first wave, no, absolutely it does not, because I don't think there's enough targets for her to start RNGing. For the second Blade Weaver wave, it can kind of alter some kill timings from what I've seen, but I've never seen a scenario where Aya will kind of just not kill. I don't know, maybe this run will be the scenario where I get completely RNG'd, but I just think given that we've also got Silver Ash there contributing to the Lancer kills as well, and given that there's a sort of fair bit of leeway with the Lancers being Silver Ashed for a bit, and then the Blade Weavers also getting Silver Ashed, and then this shield guy eating some hits from Suzu and Aya, that I think there's a fair bit of leeway, and so I've never seen a scenario where it actually does end up mattering. Anyway, we've undeployed No because she's already done what she needs to do. And we kind of just wait for this guy. And so now we mag stall because we know that he's going to be getting the full duration of the bind. The timing for this, there's a wide variety of timings. I'm doing this early just so I don't forget later down the line. But essentially, the important part is just you want to make sure that you get all your binds off before this guy starts resting on this tile here. Because once he starts resting on this tile, then it doesn't matter if you've bound him because he's already reached that stopping point. And so you've essentially wasted 2.5 seconds of bind. So that's why you want to make sure that he gets stalled before he reaches this point. And that's why we left that drone here, because it has literally zero impact on anything. It will just get retreated for free. No point in popping Elysium just yet because we're capped on DP. And once this guy sort of reaches this, is about to reach this intersection between the two tiles, that's when we know we're okay to pop Mudrock's S3. As this guy is about to enter this sort of zone that's covered by the drone's range, we will drop a drone here, and we split box this guy with Quora. Reason being is that later on when we use Aya to kill the demo, she will also kill this Mook, and Quora will still be blocking another Mook who will be higher on her targeting list, as well as the Grudge Bearer. And after that we shouldn't have to, and after that there's no more Mooks, so essentially there'll just be one healthy Mook and a Grudge Bearer and then a free block slot. And then with Quora's S2, that's another block slot. So that's one slot blocking the Mook, and then 3 other slots blocking Grudge Bearers. And what that means is that we can line up the Grudge Bearers ever so slightly better. This is completely optional, but it does line up the Grudge Bearers better, which is why I do it. And now that we aren't capped on DP, we use Eli's S2. And because I've apparently been very good with my Spectre retreat timing, we can actually drop her on this armored guy. Normally I would have Silver Ash block him and it would also be completely fine, and then drop Spectre afterwards. But this is a nice little bonus because we can be pretty damn certain that, we are certain that she's now blocking him. And we can just drop Silver Ash and know that he's going to be targeting Armor Boy. So I don't have to worry about a Blade proc. Eli is just about done with his skills, so we can retreat him. And so yeah, that's of course what ends up happening with the third Lancer, is that we time our Mudrock S3 such that he's kind of, I guess, blocked late, and then that gives us some more window for Mudrock to start whacking at Lancer Boy. And because this guy's stunned, and because Mudrock has had a ton of time to herself, she's going to be on 3 shield layers, so the normally massive incoming damage from this Lancer is just going to be completely thrown out the window, which is of course good for us. And Spectre S2 as soon as possible. Sara's up, so we're going to deploy her. And yeah, and just one other thing that I forgot to mention, I think would be good to mention now, is so the reason why I deploy Spectre, why I changed it from Spectre here to now Silver Ash here and Spectre here, is because my worry was that Spectre would die, essentially, before the Blade Weavers would come. And as you can see from her health level, she would have actually died if I stuck with that strat. Which is why instead I'm going for a Silver Ash kill, especially after figuring out that this Lancer number 3 is going to die to a combination of Mudrock and Aya. And also this just clears out an annoying crossbow earlier, which is always a good thing, because I really don't want those crossbow bolts hitting like Suza and Aya if I can avoid it. Aya up. We face her up just so that she can deal a little bit more damage to that shield guard before we need to pop her S3. And now that we can see that these Blade Weavers are sort of about to enter the kill zone, we pop all our stuff. And since Crossbow Guy's dead, we retreat Spectre. We want Saria's S3 up first before we do Aya S3, and that's just so that we can have the Lancers taking more amped damage. And now that the Lancers are in an absolute death zone, we can pop Aya. And the other cool thing about Saria S3 is that this Lancer is also in Saria's range, which means him and all the mooks here are also going to be taking amp damage, which, you know, no one's going to say no to 55% extra arts, especially when it's coming from Aya. And yeah, we don't really have to worry about drone health here because Suzerain's got it covered. And yeah, you can see just how much Silverash's contribution to the Lancers also just helps. Okay, now this flag guy is moving, so we want to pay attention to these blades. And the next freeze proc after that is when we want to drop our drone. So now that they've been frozen, we drop our drone. And we need to stall this guy just a little bit to make sure that the crossbowman that crosses the middle is going to be the first guy that we block. And yeah, this armor book can die, I don't care. We aren't blocking him, so it doesn't matter, it's inconsequential. And even though the drones run out, these guys are mostly dead, so we don't really care about the fact that they're gonna be running away. And now that the coast is clear and we know that Nell isn't going to be taking any accidental hits, we should be able to drop her. And since all of our high priority targets are dead, we don't have any need for Silverash and Aya, so we just retreat them. And we know we've done it right because the crossbowman is the first guy blocked. You can see the Grudgebearer coming up, so we're pretty confident that he's going to be blocked too. And yeah, that's why we want to stall this guy just for that tiny bit, is because I've had issues before where I've actually gotten 2 flags blocked because this guy wasn't stalled enough because Grudgebearers move so damn slow. So those like 2 binds can actually make a huge difference. And you can also see the difference that all those mag binds were making on this guy right here, the guy that's currently walking up. Because if we didn't have those, then this guy would be walking up before the crossbowman, especially given that the crossbowman's kind of stopping to do all his attacks, which means we block a crossbowman, which means we die. And we'll just kind of block Korra's skill, whatever. Not a big deal. And yeah, you can see Grudgebearer's blocked, flag's blocked, all is good. So yeah, we kept Suzu on the field for as long as possible so that her talent could be taken, so that we could have Mags take advantage of that talent. But now that we don't really want the crossbow to take any more damage, we don't bother with that. And we can pop Modrock's skill pretty willy-nilly because there's so few mooks left and we don't have to worry about Mud's redeployment a whole lot. Yeah, so I should have dropped this first drone earlier so that I could get the second drone up earlier and not have to worry about that. Fortunately, in this case, it came back fast enough that we didn't have to worry. But yeah, technically that's more optimal. Like, technically it's better if I drop that drone earlier. Anyway, we blocked this Mook with Eli to buy some more time for Spectre to come up. And we don't have to worry really about the crossbow hitting Eli because no, even if he takes damage, no is going to heal him back up. We ready a drone in this same spot just as the drones are about to retreat, and drop it again. That's just to give us a little bit more stall in case we need it for these armored guys, because we want to be blocking them and killing them all with Spectre later. And we can retreat this drone, we don't need it. Since we don't need to stall this guy for any longer, we can pop Eli's skill as well, and we can just drop a drone here in advance for the Demolisher. And I'll just retreat Eli a bit earlier because DP's not tight, and because I really don't want him accidentally hitting a flag and making all this hard work for nothing. Can drop a second drone down. Retreat Spectre since all these mooks are dead and no one's gonna come back up for a good while. And I'm just gonna let like one bind go off, retreat Mags, drop Aya, and again, the timing for Mudrock is like super generous because we won't need her redeployed for an incredibly long time. So letting her chunk this guy is fine by me. Like slowly whack away at this guy is fine by me. No Quora because I don't really want to block this guy. I want to. And since this last Mook is dead, we can retreat Mudrock. And we'll Quora now that this guy is walked past. I'm pretty sure Quora wouldn't really be taking much damage from him. But at the same time, I don't really need to block him either. And we can have her S2 up for the last Grudge Wave like easily in time. And she's not going to be at risk of dying at any point during that process. So again, we're good. This guy's dead, retreat Aya, drop Silver Ash, drop Suzu, and the reason why these two get dropped first is because they have the longest duration skills, which means that ideally I want them taking damage last, just so that I can get more advantage out of it. Like if Aya dies after a volcano ends, I don't really care because she's already done the damage that she could. She's facing the wall, she's not going to be doing any more damage after that. Right? And so... but whereas with Silver Ash and Suzu, I don't really want them dying early because they have such a sort of lengthy uptime, relatively speaking, compared to like everyone else. We just drop Eli for some DP. Even though Spectre's up, if you recall, I said that I would use Spectre for her I want to synergize Spectre with Mudrock, so we resist the temptation to drop Spectre just because a redeployment came back up. And we drop Mags here just so that she's not at risk of hitting any clappers. And we just store those clappers for that tiny bit longer, just so that we can be completely confident that Aya will be back up. She is. We'll just wait a bit to make sure that we don't get screwed over by the whole like pause deploy thing, where if you pause deploy like 2 units within very quick succession, then they can get targeted. Like, then one can be targeted when they aren't meant to. So we'll just wait a bit and deploy Mudrock. It's not like how we need Mudrock to be back within like an extremely short time frame anyway. And we probably have enough DP from yeah, we have more than enough DP from Eli, so we'll treat him and drop our drone bait. And so just looking at the current state of things, so the aggro, once all is said and done, will be Spectre, then the drone. So Spectre and the drone will take hits first, then the drone will obviously die, so it'll be Spectre and Mudrock. Mudrock has enough HP, and because of her talent she can survive one clap unshielded. She'll have 3 shields by the time those clappers start attacking her, which means that she'll take 3, then 1 hit will be to her HP, but she'll survive anyway. Then the 3rd hit will also be Spectre Mudrock. Mudrock will definitely die from that. 4th hit will be Spectre Aya, and I believe Spectre will die from that, and so will Aya. But even then, Silver Ash, Saria, and Suzerain will all still be alive. So that's why it's this deployment order. And we pop Quora just to hold this guy in place while we wait for that last clapper to come out. And since this guy's pretty much in line with all the other clappers, we can now retreat Quora. And we kind of pay some attention to Saria's HP because she is actually quite low, and so I do want to activate Suzerain's skill before she's at major risk of dying. And we can probably activate Suzerain's skill around here when this guy's sort of crossing up. The timing for this is pretty generous, but I found that this timing works in my play, so it's the one that I stick with. Plus, I can still see this guy from here, even as I'm hovering, even as I'm clicking on Suzerain, so I can use him as a nice gauge. And I also found that as Mudrock rears for a swing, this is a good time to pop her S3. We can be pretty confident that this guy's gonna be within range of both Aya and Silver Ash, so we'll just pop Saria's skill. Timing on this is again quite lenient. And now we look at Mudrock, and we watch for the white glow that happens when she's about to stun everyone. And when that white glow happens is when we can pop Silver Ash, Aya, and then drop Spectre. White glow, pop, pop, drop, and we'll also just boost it up. And yeah, Mudrock stun goes off, attacks get cancelled. And as soon as it's possible, we pop Spectre. And that's a whole lot of dead clappers. Retreat everyone so that we can set up for the second kill. Deploy Eli, specifically here, just so that he can block the flag that once we retreat Korra, we'll start walking up. I killed the fourth one faster. Yeah, I'm not actually entirely sure what's the determinant behind the like kill times. Maybe it's like me pressing the buttons slightly earlier, maybe it's the timing with Spectre or something, but either way there's a pretty comfortable margin here. There's a pretty comfortable margin with the kill, and I think that's kind of the reason why I wanted to like theorycraft the Clapper's kill first, because I know the Clapper kills first, because I knew that those are going to give me the biggest headache if I didn't sort of devote the time into thinking about them. And so as a result, the Clapper kills end up being probably the easiest part of the entire run, whilst everything before that is just a mess and a massive hassle to execute if you don't know like what to do. Anyway, Korra's up, and just a little sort of tidbit happens with I think every strat that involves a defender swap is you want to wait until this crossbow guy finishes attacking, because if you retreat mid-animation then he's gonna be stuck there, the flags are gonna walk ahead of him, and then you'll block a flag and you'll die. So attack, wait for him to lower his crossbow, he walks forward ahead of everyone else, then we deploy Korra, and she starts whacking this guy. We'll drop mags, we'll drop, because I do need her later, we'll stick with roughly the same deployment order of Silver Ash, Suzerain into Aya. And then we want to deploy Saria after Aya, because Aya absolutely melts to crossbows, whilst Saria obviously does not melt to crossbows. And now we kind of just wait for Korra to slowly beat on that last crossbow. Just let it hit, and just keep hitting. This guy's getting quite low, so I'm not going to let her use an S2 again until after this crossbow guy's dead. Yeah, we can see now he's like super low. And I'm pretty confident I can kill him before Korra's gonna die. So we're just gonna slow down and slowly watch this guy get beaten to death by a dumb turtle. Yep, now you can't even see the orange, so he's very clearly going to die. Oh, you could there, but point still stands. He's gonna die real soon. He's dead. We pop Cora's skill. We drop Mudrock. No, fortunately, this strat is not pay to win. We do not press that skill. We press this skill. And because Sarkars move quite slowly when they aren't pissed off as hell, we can just retreat nil and be pretty confident that they aren't going to make it into Aya or Silver Ash range. And yeah, Sara tanks the crossbows. Since these guys are already split boxed, since these guys are already going to be split boxed once we drop Spectre on their heads, we can just kind of pop our amp skills and be fine. And again, we're going to watch for the white glow. White glow. There's our white glow. Pop, 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 drop. No, don't need drone bait. I don't have the deployment slots for it anyway. In fact, this kill is very comfy because there's only the clapper can only go through one Mudrock shield at a time. So Mudrock will actually last for a very long time, relatively speaking. Since Cora's S2 duration is about to end and I don't want her hitting another flag and triggering another defense buff, we're going to retreat her, drop a drone, and then use Magellan to stall those flags for the very last time. And the clapper very comfortably dies. Absolutely no worries. And now we just have to kill the flags. Simple as that. So yeah, the hard part of this strat is not the Grudge Bearer kills, because as you can see, when you get it down, the Grudge Bearers actually die quite fast and quite easily. The hard part is everything that's not the Grudge Bearer kills. And that is how you execute the strat. And how fitting that the operator that does so much for us is the one on the clear screen this time. Yeah, this took quite a lot of time to figure out, and I'm not even sure if my explanations did it justice. I tried to explain the I guess play process in as much detail as I could, and I guess a bit of the theory behind it. Yeah, the Suzu pot matters, probably. I think the optimizations around like Aya kills may have made it less necessary, but Suzu pot is Suzu pot. But yeah, I think that's about it for the stream. I've been recording the VOD the entire time, so I'll upload that later to YouTube. But for now, thanks for watching. If you want to review anything again, it will be on YouTube. For now though,